ask if we're gonna change our seals, and I looked at it. It takes it a lot to say.
It's 1897. 100 years is 1997. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Brennan.
Here.
Counselor Lavin.
I am here.
Counselor Peeler. Counselor Grimaldi. Counselor Gelati.
Here.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Here.
Counselor Morocco.
Here.
Counselor Whitfield.
Here.
And Mayor Valentino.
Here. And I was remiss, Councilor Grimaldi emailed me shortly about an hour ago saying you're stuck in Buffalo and wasn't going to be able to make it tonight. I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add a resolution adopting the City of Geneva investment policy. And I need a second. Second by Councilor Petropoulos. Clerk, please call the roll on adding the resolution to the agenda.
Mayor Valentino.
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Aye.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Lavin.
Aye.
Counselor Peeler. No, sorry. Counselor Grimaldi. Counselor Gelat.
Aye.
Counselor Morocco.
Aye.
And Counselor Whitfield.
Aye.
Passes.
So the agenda has been amended, and since we don't have old business, new business tonight's dedicated to budget presentations, I would like to start with the resolution itself, and I'll ask the city manager to explain it, please.
Sure. So the resolution allows the city to begin investing our local resources through a policy. The policy authorizes, operationalizes the authority granted to the Comptroller in the city charter and authorizes the Comptroller to maintain responsibility for administration of an investment program. It establishes written procedures for the operation of this program and creates investment policies. The procedures and the policies will include internal controls to provide a satisfactory level of accountability based upon records incorporating the description and amounts of investments, the funds for which they are held, the places where they're kept, and other relevant information, including dates of sales or other dispositions and amount realized. The program follows the Office of the State Comptroller as well as our local municipal laws, allowing us to invest the city resources.
Thank you, and I need a motion. Councilor Gelat, seconded by Councilor Petropoulos. Clerk, please call the roll, or no, any discussion, excuse me. Any discussion? Councilor Lavin.
Yeah, Your Honor, I feel compelled to say that while I'm likely to support this as an outcome, there's a deeper story to this activity tonight, and I think we owe it to the public at some point in the future to present the organizational challenges that may have left some hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table in the way that we've been handling the city's finances. And I think I'll glad to take this good step to remedy the situation, but I think we owe it to look into the cause and to the performance of of ourselves as fiduciaries for how we got to the point where this night was taken forward. Thank you.
Council, we have our agenda setting meeting tomorrow, so let's talk about putting something on the agenda for October.
Great. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Gelat.
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Aye.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi. Counselor Morocco.
Aye.
Counselor Whitfield.
Aye.
and Mayor Valentino.
Aye. Now, if we can have a drum roll. The next thing on the agenda is the 2025 budget presentation.
All right. Well, thank you. Members of council, before you is the presentation. At the end of the presentation, you'll be provided your budget books. I know you've all anticipated getting your budget books, especially those of you that it's your first year on council. It really is a privilege and honor for me to present the budget presentation and be joined with by the Comptroller this year. When you read the city manager's message, which you'll get at the end of the presentation, you will see I started with a quote from Helen Keller, which said, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." That was a theme that ran through the budget, is how we use the investments from our city taxpayers wisely to ensure that they're getting the services that they need. When we dive into the following pages, you will see a change in our budget. You will see ways that we want to continue to sustain our city, as well as some of the challenges that are ahead for us. With the constraints that are part of a city and working together, there are many things that we can do, but there are a lot of choices that we will make. Each part of the budget has been really developed in conjunction with all of our department heads and others. One of the things that I want to ensure to council is we have many experts that work in City Hall, in all of our departments, in all of our buildings, and they know a lot about the various jobs and responsibilities. They take that expertise and they build upon what they know. They continue to learn and grow, and our employees put that into the budget that you will see tonight. So diving into the budget, where do we start? We start with our mission, vision, and values. This year, members of our leadership team dove into redefining our mission, vision, and values slightly, making it a little easier to remember than some of the 5- and 7-page documents that we found, making it clear, consistent, and concise to really show that the City of Geneva is here to provide an efficient and responsible local government services, allowing everyone to enjoy the benefits of living and working in our uniquely urban city. Our vision is really envisioning the city as a place that is beautiful, prosperous, connected, equitable, and sustainable. Those words may mean something to all of you because they're key in our comprehensive plan. And as residents, city staff, and appointed and elected officials of city, it's our values and our decisions and actions will be guided by them. And the values are safety, innovation, caring and respect, integrity and honor, and service and stewardship. So instead of waiting till the very end, here is where we've come with this budget. There are 3 budgets that we'll talk about tonight. There is the operating budget, the water budget, and the sewer budget. Our total appropriations in our 2025 our proposed budget is just over $22 million. Revenues are around $12 million, which means our levy total is around $10 million. This puts us at a tax rate of $13.97 per $1,000. Our property tax cap is just over $9 million. You'll see that the levy total is over that, so we would have to do a tax cap override. The price of a median home has increased. Our value has increased in the city from $117,000 last year to $143,900 this year. With that being said, the tax on a median value home would be about $2,010. For the water fund, the total water fund is $3 million. The spending level is actually a decrease in spending, and we'll get into a little more discussion on that. But the impact on the consumer is a slight increase in spending for next year. Sewer level is at $5.5 million. Our spending level has also increased there about 5%, and our impact on our consumers will be a 2.5% increase they'll see in their bills. So what does this all mean? So who are we serving, and what does it all mean? Tie together. Some of the things that we've seen between 2021 data and 2022. Now, when I talk about census data, there's a couple caveats here. This is American Community Survey. It's not necessarily as accurate as the the regular census, which would come out in 2020, you will see that some of these percentages are based on when the Census American Community Survey information has come. So a majority of these are from 2022. Actually, the high school graduates is also from 2022. When you see the increases, it's from 2021. So median household income has gone up. Our median household income is up to $63,000 a family. That's a 13.5% increase. Our gross monthly rent has also gone up. It's not gone up as much as the income, which is a nice thing, but it's going up. High school graduates, also an increase. Number of high school graduates living in the city. Our population has increased slightly, and then the number of persons in poverty or living in poverty has not changed. That would be a number we'd really like to see decrease. When we begin the budget, we look at not just local information, but what's going on and why are we seeing what we're seeing and what can we project in the future. One of the things that we looked at is inflation. I will say creating this chart from this year to last year, or from last year to this year, is very different. The U.S. inflation rate last year was much, much higher. You would even see 8% and 9% on the chart. This is all staying relatively back down to where it was at the pre-pandemic level. So we're no longer seeing those highs. Consumer confidence. So consumer confidence is how are people spending their money and how willing are they to spend their money. There is some piece of seasonal variation in consumer sentiment, but I will say that it has stayed fairly consistent the last 3 months. Overall, expectations have strengthened for both personal finances and the 5-year economic outlook, and that's from the Consumer Sentiment Report. And despite the stock market having one of the largest one-drop days in August, on August 5th, the sentiment has really remained unchanged, which is a good thing for us. It means people are still buying things. The stock market, this is always one that's just interesting because the stock market reports every day that it's open, but this is the one-year trend of the stock market. You will see it's staying consistently high. It is once again, it did experience that early August setback, but it recovered very quickly. It gained 26% last year, and it's up almost 20% more this year. So the stock market is feeling very good. I will say with the caveat that the Federal Reserve starts their meeting tomorrow and Wednesday. So while I try to use everything I can only prepare a budget for what I know at the point in time when I present the budget. The Comptroller can testify I try to change the budget up until the very last moment of printing because I'm trying to keep watching all of those economic indicators. Next year we should probably move it back a week if the Fed's going to meet. Unemployment rate. Unemployment rate in Ontario County is staying below New York State, which is a positive. New York State's at 4.3%. Ontario County is at 3.2%. Again, this is another chart where it has seasonal variables. So winter season, summer season, you see a difference. One of the things about unemployment, it's the number of people in labor market that are not employed that want to be employed. It's not all people, and so that's something we continue to watch. And then sales tax collection. Our sales tax collection is no longer trending in such high variations. It's starting to stabilize. And our sales tax is collected through Ontario County. We have a sharing agreement, and then we receive that. I like to point that out because I love people shopping in the city of Geneva, but if they can't shop in the city of Geneva, their second choice is anywhere in Ontario County. It just helps all of us continue to benefit from those sales taxes. It's also important to know about our county budget versus our city budget because this all comes back to taxpayer bills as well as our school district budget. I don't have the full school district budget here for you tonight, but I did request some of that information and we'll share it when I have more. But as far as the county and the city, this is from 2024. The total county appropriations you can see is $292 million. They're slightly larger than us. And then their county levy is $74 million. Their tax rate turns out to be $6.31 per $1,000 of value, which also is seen on those tax bills when they go home. And then the total city appropriations of last year was 19.5 million. The levy was just over 8.4 million, and then the tax rate was 17.25. The budget direction. So as we started this process, as a council, we discussed budgets, and the focus on the budget really was start with smart spending, connect our work needs and future city needs, review our actual spending, and understand what can be done and what we have, how we can move forward. Wise investments. I was not planning on you passing that policy this evening, but that's a piece of the investment strategy that we started the discussions on last year. But it's not only about investing money, it's investing in our people and our infrastructure that will last beyond one generation. We want to use data to drive our decisions, and when you receive the budget books, you'll see we've added more information and data to the budget book this year. The other piece is stable revenues. So while we want to use wise investments in the financial investment, we also have to understand that investments in sales tax, while great revenue sources, are elastic revenue sources. They expand and contract, and you cannot always predict what they're going to do. And so when you talk investment strategy or other things like that, we just have to be cautious to know what those are doing. The other piece, taxes and fees, make up a significant percentage of our municipal budget. The budget also aims to utilize other revenue outside of those investments, things like grants and other benefit services. Tax rate review, we know it. The tax rate in Geneva is much higher than the majority of our peers. Late last week, I'm sorry, I don't know what day it is, and you'll see that as the days go on. Late last week, we did do a budget presentation on 101, the Comptroller and I, that talked about some of our peer municipalities and what their tax rates are. We do have one of the highest tax rates in New York State. There are varying ideas behind that reasoning. A large piece of that is we also have one of the largest percentages of property that are not on the tax roll, as well as other exemptions. Those are things we can continue to look at. The budget also has to focus on ways to reduce that tax rate while still providing the services that are key to our community. So our drivers, expenditures and revenues. We'll start with expenditures. Labor and benefits. It is the largest driver. Our staffing levels in 2024 was at 137 FTEs. We'll talk a little bit more about what FTEs mean. You will see as you look at the budget book that they may change sometimes depending on who is counting them. So full-time equivalent or full-time employee or full employee, all are different things. So full-time equivalent numbers could mean you have 0.5s when you're talking about that because you have not half a person. You have a person working half-time, part-time, or working between two areas. When we talk about full-time employees, that would mean someone that works full-time for the city. And then we get into some sharing agreements where we have a full-time employee who works half-time for the city of Geneva and half-time for the city of Canandaigua, but they still count as a full employee because they're on the Geneva payroll, although we then charge for their services. So I say all of that, and if you get confused about it in the future, please continue to ask because I think that is going to be one of the confusing pieces. But when we look at this, salary and wages, just on projected growth, have increased from 8.6 million in 2024 to 9.1 million. There is only 1.5, not a half person, half position, added into our staffing level, and we'll talk more about that. Labor and benefits, we have 6 unions that we negotiate with and then employees who are unrepresented. Currently, at the end of 2024, we had 4 contracts that expired, and then at the end of end of 2023, 4 contracts expired. End of 2024, 2 more of the 6 contracts will expire. Since the end of 2023, 2 of the 6 have been settled, so you'll see municipal employees and Teamsters Command have both been settled. We still have 4 open contracts that we are negotiating. The other side to labor is the benefits, so things like health insurance, workers' comp, other fiduciary responsibilities. Our employee and benefits costs have increased about $750,000. Oop. And I pushed a button too quickly. The other piece that we have here is debt. So our debt that you'll see here, our total outstanding debt in 2025 is just under $43 million. 20% of our debt contracting is exhausted. That means that we can't go above, 100%. 20% has already been exhausted. Our debt service is $2.62 million. That does include our bond issue costs. So while we're paying debt zones, we're paying the payments. We also have bond costs that go in there. And then 2024, same. We were at 2.64 million, so that has gone down some. There are limits on how much debt a local government or school district can incur for counties, cities, and villages. You can see here it talks about the percentage of a 5-year average valuation, and then what the debt is issued for. This is our total, so it includes water and sewer. Oh no, this is general fund. Sorry. Some other drivers of our expenditures, capital projects. There is $11.9 million of capital projects proposed in this budget. They include things like reconstruction, and you'll see it mentions what funds, because it's not just $11.9 million from the general fund. They go over the 3 funds. So when you get the book, in your capital projects, it will divide out where that funding comes from. So things in the capital projects include street reconstruction, the wastewater treatment plant clarifier and the screen bar replacement, radio system upgrades, cellular water meters, Pulteney Street sewers, and street construction that ties hand in hand, Middle Street bridge replacement, lakefront improvements, lakefront seawall, sewer infrastructure maintenance, and street resurfacing. You'll also see that there are some of these that have grant funds tied to them in addition to other funds. Facility maintenance. So often we talk about our infrastructure and our aging infrastructure, which means we have to also maintain our infrastructure. It's not just the things below, it's also above. So things like the window replacement in this building to make sure that we have energy efficient windows as well as windows that close and seal, boiler upgrades, and then standard maintenance in the public safety building, a rooftop unit replacement, standard maintenance, roof repairs at North Genesee, DPW's building. The firehouse also needs a roof replacement and has some standard maintenance items. Parks and playgrounds, Nieder Park basketball court upgrade, Brook Street tennis court repairs, replacement of park signs throughout our parks. We also are looking at a pilot contract to support additional maintenance to the DRI areas and pocket parks. We'll dive into departments a little bit more and you'll learn more about that. At the lakefront, the glass doors need to be replaced on that building. The shade structures are in need of repair. The gazebo took some damage with some of our significant weather events, and so we are looking to replace and repair that in partnership with Geneva Community Projects, who's already donated some funding and some services to get that underway. As far as the recreation complex, it has no allocation because that complex is still under that study. And so there may be additional maintenance efforts needed at that complex. Again, this is 1.2 million of required maintenance projects. And then we have equipment. There's a lot of equipment here. This is in your equipment replacement plan. So there's multiple ways that we fund equipment. This year, one of the things that we have really looked at is moving away from borrowing for equipment and making sure that we're doing current year equipment purchases, as well as using what I call cash for capital instead of investing or using that borrowed dollars, making sure we can do it in the front end. In here, you'll see 2 police patrol cars, 4 self-contained breathing apparatuses, a fire and inspection vehicle, gas meter, fire simulator. As you go through this in the budget book, which will be available shortly, you will see where all of the funds come from. We are not taking from the Equipment Reserve Fund this year. We're actually going to ask to put money into the Equipment Reserve Fund. The Equipment Reserve Fund should allow us to purchase more equipment and have the long-standing. With this, it's an investment in making sure that fund continues to survive. So, as we said, the cost increases are not just all of these pieces, but also a lot of the things that we do business with has increased. So we have employees, and we talked about their benefits. Just so you're aware, our healthcare plans in 2024 or 2025 are projected to increase by 14%. We did make a move last year to change our health insurance plan and our provider. I will say that we realized some savings because it grew much larger last year than this year, and this year it's in alignment with our previous provider. So while it's growing, healthcare across the board is growing, and probably if you look at the paper, you can see that everywhere. Cost for materials, utilities, and supplies, we are projecting a 7% to 15% increase on all of those items. That's what we've seen. And then mandated pension costs. We always get a very nice email from the Comptroller's office right around this time of year that lets us know that we should project an increase. We are projecting an increase between 2 to 5% depending on the pension unit. And that's not something that can be negotiated. That's kind of it's the cost of doing business. That was a lot of expenditures. I do have some good news on the revenue side of things, and so we'll dive into that. Revenues, sales tax. Both the Comptroller and I are very conservative with our sales tax projections. I will say we went a little more aggressive this year. Seeing sales tax stabilize, we feel confident that as long as it remains flat, we should be able to project at least to the 2023 level. 2024 budgeted sales tax is $4.1 million. Currently, in our first 2 quarters, we've been able to realize $2.7 million. So we feel confident that next year we could realize $4.9 million. That revenue is now in your budget, and you'll see how that plays out. I did put a note here, though, because it does make me nervous. It's to remind you this is an elastic revenue source. We will look at it, and we'll need to monitor it on a quarterly basis, monthly and quarterly. We get the reports. We'll have to watch and see where we're going. Assistance, aid, and incentives for municipalities, or AIM funding. It increased for the first time in 15 years for our 2025 budget. It's an additional revenue of $225,000, and it is something that we greatly appreciate. I would love to say we can expect it to increase again, but hopefully it happens before, 15 years. Investments. So the policy you adopted tonight allows us to really continue to be prudent but aggressive in investing our city resources. These are not additional funds. They are not surplus funds. These are funds that are our liquid assets currently, and we'll utilize those current assets to have a higher rate of investment. Again, I mentioned that Federal Reserve meeting. I assume that means our investment rates will go down slightly, but in the meantime, we can realize some of this. We have projected in the general fund additional revenue of just under $400,000. And then cash for expenses. Our fund balance has to be by city charter. We have to maintain a positive fund balance. Our fund balance rate has to be between 12 and 15% of the recommended budget. Our fund balance continues to grow, and it's something that we have to be cautious on. I go back to our conservative belief on not overspending our fund balance, but also acknowledging that it is taxpayer dollars, that we have taxed them from year to year, that we then put into that account. This budget is built with a transfer of $924,000 to go towards many of the building maintenance projects that I had talked about, as well as the safety coordinator pilot position. Our safety coordinator pilot position was first funded for 3-year funding this current year. That position has not yet been filled. we would encumber the funds from this year and continue with a 3-year position. The idea behind that safety coordinator position was that it would be a person that could get our program up and running, and then our program could then go back into the departments, and you would not need a long-term position. It has not been filled at this point, as I mentioned, but it is continued to use that one-time funding. So it does not change your tax levy to remove that or to add it. One of the priorities for 2025 is fleet management. Currently, our departments provide a lot of our fleet management services. We have various vehicles that we're utilizing, and we are going to review a fleet management policy and priority for 2025. There are several municipalities that have moved to fleet management companies for a variety of reasons. The first being increased purchasing power, which also means that vehicles come to us at a quicker rate. Since the pandemic, it takes longer to get a lot of our vehicles and supplies, and they can purchase larger quantities. It also allows us to look at fuel management. They can diagnose vehicles. They can provide the oversight and understanding of it. They are experts, and they draw on our own expertise in-house. Overall, we are projecting a cost savings on this because of that purchasing power. They purchase a large quantity. They can still utilize our state bids, but they can get the best deals possible. With the fleet management plans, I've had initial conversations with some of our employees. I want to be clear on a couple of things. One, we would not reduce employee numbers at this time. Our employees would continue to provide services on our fleet vehicles that we currently have in operations. Two, our fleet vehicles that we currently have wouldn't suddenly be replaced. I'm not proposing that we replace all of our vehicles. I'm proposing that as we go through our planning, we have more assistance in the planning purchases. And three, we would be able to customize and locally choose our fleet management. So if we have a vendor that we work very closely with now that has already gone through our bid process, we could continue to work with that vendor. And we also could choose if we wanted a certain type of vehicle that we know works better for us. We would work with the fleet manager to understand what they believe could work better for us and then make an informed decision. So it's much more about not just the purchasing power and the cost savings, but also the informed decision making that can be another tool to our staff. And I'm going to turn it over to the Comptroller so you can stop listening to me for a few minutes.
Good evening. So I'm just going to do a quick, brief rundown. I shouldn't say quick, a brief rundown of each of the department budgets, just to give you a little bit of oversight into the changes that you'll see in our 2025 proposed budget versus what there was for 2024. The city clerk's budget, the main change, they did see a 10.5% increase in the budget. The main driver behind this is Ontario County has changed the way that they are calculating the amount that the city of Geneva owes for the animal control portion, and there was a rather significant increase into that amount. So you'll see that in your budget book. I don't know how you want me to tell you to change. You want me to just flip the page?
You flip the page and I'll follow you.
City council and the mayor's budget. Overall, there was not a large increase or any changes to either one of these budgets. The only change that we recommended was an increase to the miscellaneous line for an additional $2,000, and this was earmarked for council projects. So if there's an idea that council brings forward that they want to try, Councilor Petropoulos, I'm thinking of the hydrant idea, there would be funding already in the budget for some of those projects rather than going through the budget amendment process for the funding related to those projects. The city manager budget saw a 9.5 decrease in it. The main driver behind this is actually a changing in staffing. So the 2024 budget reflected a half-year funding for the community engagement coordinator, and in 2025 we did not recommend that position, so the full amount for that was withdrawn from the 2025 budget recommendation. And the other Minor changes where we increased the training line by $2,000 just based upon some of the ongoing conferences that city staff members are already attending, and much like everything else, we've seen an increase in some of those conferences. And then we did a reallocation with a shared staff member between the HR department and the city manager's department, so there's a slight change in that percentage as well. The city attorney, there was an increase from 2024, and that is a direct result of a change in our primary legal counsel, which counsel was involved in that, and we made the change in the early part of 2024. Human Resources saw a just over a 14% increase in their 2025 recommended budget. This primarily is a result, we put in a new line within this budget. We're still working out the name. We have it called Employee Services right now, and this line basically is there to include all of the costs associated with employee benefits, such as the EAP program, Paragon, and other vendor-related payments for employee benefits outside of health insurance. This is a change that we made from previous budgets to move these charges under a department. Previously, they were non-departmental, just so that we had a little more control and oversight over the cost of them, so that we are aware if we get into a situation where we feel like we should be exploring the cost that we're paying per vendor, we have a better handle on how much the vendors are costing us, and we can look into it in the future.
And this is one of the slides where you'll see the difference between full-time equivalents and full-time positions. So in their key metrics, they're talking about full-time people, not equivalents. I just want to point that out before I get calls about that one.
The Comptroller budget saw a 13% increase in our recommended budget, and the primary driver behind this is the initial setup costs that we have associated with implementing electronic timekeeping and streamlining that payroll process. We do have some funds in the 2024 budget right now that we would plan to encumber to also cover the initial setup costs, and then roughly between $20,000 and $25,000 of ongoing cost for that system that we're looking at implementing. And in addition to that, much like everything else, we also saw a estimated increase in the cost for our audit fees as well. The assessor's office saw probably one of the larger changes, just because of how we are planning to move forward with the assessor's office in 2025. So there was a 24% increase in the recommended budget. The primary driver behind this is staffing. So in 2024, we started to work with the city of Canandaigua for an additional shared service position for a tax clerk, and we are recommending that we continue that for 2025. So the additional cost that's reflected in here is related to the extra help line for the assessor's budget for that shared position. The police department saw a 7% increase in our recommended budget from 2024. The majority of the increase is actually a result of contractual obligations for required equipment that the police department has to have, such as body cameras, tasers, the computers that are within their cars, their record management system. I will say that Chief has done extensive research on seeing what other options are out there. So when he was pulling together his budget, and then in multiple conversations back and forth, we have looked at not only the best cost for the vendor, but also what other municipalities, who's the county using, so that we're not basically selecting a vendor purely based upon price, but we're selecting a vendor that's also one that we can work collaboratively with other police departments and the sheriff's department around us. The fire department actually remained relatively flat. They saw just a 1.2% decrease actually in their recommended budget. This still allows us, by maintaining their budget at a relatively flat level, it still includes in the recommended budget additional investments in equipment maintenance and upkeep, We are trying to get onto a replacement schedule. We started in 2024 for the sets of fire protection, rather than having such a large cost every 5 to 10 years to replace all of the fire protection system. We're trying to implement a rolling system where essentially we buy a little bit each year, and then you would only have to replace a little bit each year once it's determined that those need to be replaced. So that's the largest one, the largest driver in here. And then, as the city manager already mentioned, we did recommend a UTV vehicle and a new fire inspection truck. The fire inspection truck will be utilized to pull the new storm response trailer that the fire department purchased this year, and also allow them to go on the fire inspections. The Planning and Economic Development Department saw a increase in just over 26% in their budget. The main driver behind this is we included a full-time grant coordinator position, which in the 2024 budget was a split position that was shared 50-50 with the assessor's office. So this is full-time in the Department of Planning and Economic Development. And we also included additional funding for our outside contractors to utilize them as well to continue the work with the engineering surveys, assistance with grant writing, and other areas of support for that department. Oh, this is the one you can skip.
There's a double page in there, so
Ignore page 42.
yes.
So recreation technically has 3 departments. We've presented them all as one department. They did see a slight increase in their budget recommendations as well. The main driver behind this increase is increasing rates for seasonal support. We looked at this across multiple different departments, and in conversations with our department heads, our HR department, other municipalities, seeing what they were experiencing, we've had some lower interest in our seasonal support staff. So our 2025 budget makes a recommendation to increase the minimum rate that we're offering to those positions, and then also streamline the increase that we're offering to returning seasonal individuals as well. The big ticket item in recreation is also we are recommending the replacement of the rec van, which is currently utilized to transport members of the summer rec program and any other various programming that they use. Information technology, this one saw a slight increase as well, and this is in mainly as a direct relation to 2 key factors. One, we are recommending an additional half full-time equivalent position. It would be a shared service with the city of Canandaigua. Again, right now, based upon the IT needs of the city of Geneva and the IT needs for the city of Canandaigua, we currently have 2 staff members that split their time equally between each city. And there really is a need for an additional employee that would share their time, so that essentially we could have somebody in the city of Geneva and the city of Canandaigua could have 1 full-time person, and then the head of our IT department can be available to assist in both locations, just with the various projects and additional undertakings that the department is taking. In addition, we are also recommending, as part of the exploring the new fleet management program, but we did set aside some funding for the director of IT for his vehicle to be one of the first vehicles that we look at for the fleet management program. Public Works also has multiple departments, so we tried to break it down. So the first one is engineering. This one saw a somewhat larger increase percentage. It's sitting at just over 52% based upon our recommendations. The main 2 drivers behind this are we are recommending a second administrative assistant position for this department. The current staffing level and the undertaking, primarily related to FEMA and other report requests and information that department is trying to pull together, is too much for the current staff to handle, and the additional requirements and the additional reporting that will be needed, particularly with FEMA again, we're recommending to have a second individual in that office.
And so engineering, I just want to be clear, because there's different divisions under Public Works. So that administrative assistant would actually support all of the Department of Public Works
Yes.
areas. So while engineering, this is also where the director sits, while engineering is its own bucket of funding, the director sits in the engineering department, but oversees all of these additional areas. The administrative staff also will support the other areas.
The additional, sorry, oh, nope, you're fine. One other thing to note is we do have funding recommended in here that is related to the capital projects that we have recommended in the 2025 budget. We have essentially the engineering surveys and designs that need to be done. We're starting the initial process for some items that will need to be done in 2025 for proposed projects in 2026. The code enforcement office saw just over a 15% increase in our recommended budget. The main driving factor behind this is we are recommending the purchase of tough books, essentially, and software that's related to those that would allow code enforcement officers to basically do the majority of their reporting out in the field. So it would create efficiencies where they could be out in the field, they could document all of their information, essentially send the information back to the office, and when they come back to the office, they can already have everything printed and ready to go. So that's one key recommendation that we have in here. The highway department saw an increase in just over 22%, and this is largely related to our recommendation for the purchase of new equipment within this department. So we are recommending in 2025 the purchase of a salt truck, the purchase of a bucket truck that is an insulated bucket truck for our electrician. I'm told that basically the height of our current bucket truck that we have does not, it just barely reaches the height that it's needed. So for the electrical work, so this would allow for a larger insulated bucket truck that would allow our electrician and other staff members to basically be able to do more of the electrician work that is required without necessarily having to rent some of the additional equipment that we currently do. And then in addition, an asphalt roller. The Buildings and Grounds Department saw probably the largest change from 2024 to 2025, and this is related to two key items that the city manager already discussed. So while similar to recreation, we have increased the seasonal rate that we are going to offer positions for. We do have included in the Buildings and Grounds budget a $200,000 pilot related to a pilot program related to contracting for vegetation control and landscaping related to our pop-up parks and our DRI. So that's one item. And then in addition to it, we consolidated all of the one-time maintenance cost that was on the previous slide for the 2025 facility maintenance within the Buildings and Grounds Department, just so that there was a way to better identify all of the maintenance projects that we've anticipated for 2025, and also allow for coordination of work between our B&G department and whatever departments are assisting or might be impacted by the projects that we're suggesting. The Business Improvement District, Catherine is here tonight. So we've had multiple conversations, emails, phone conversations going back and forth. And our recommendation is a slight increase from 2024, but it's not the full recommendation that the bid initially asked for, taking into consideration that we included that one-time pilot program for outsourcing the maintenance for the pop-up parks and the DRI project. We had conversations with the bid about what it would take for them to continue some of the DRI maintenance that they're currently doing and what funding would be required for that. And then we also included, the same as 2024, the recommendation for the economic development payment as well. Water rates and sewer rates, I'll talk about them somewhat in conjunction. So the water rates, we are proposing a 1.5% increase from the 2024 rates, and this is a result of several things. So we are anticipating that the demand for our water usage is going to be decreasing in 2025 just based upon some economic factors and other information that we've received. And then in addition to that, the cost associated with the supplies that are required for the water department for the treatments and chemicals and all of that continue to increase. So while we were able to reduce some areas of the water budget, and by reducing some areas of the budget and proposing a minimal rate increase, it should allow us to still balance the water fund budget with a little impact to community members. And then same with sewer rates. So we're proposing a 2.5% increase for the sewer rates. Similar to the water fund, this is related to, we are anticipating the usage to decrease, which will result in a reduction in our revenue. We were able to decrease the sewer budget in certain areas, but we didn't want to go too drastic with the reduction because there has been several equipment replacement items in 2024. So similar to the fire department, we were trying to get on a schedule where we're replacing at least one of the various pumps that are needed. So there is the waste activated pump, I can never remember the RAS pump, and then the ABS pump. Return.
Activated sludge.
So by including 3 of these pumps, essentially one of each year or more, our hope is that they won't all basically give out at the same time. So you'll only have to replace, you can start getting on a replacement schedule rather than reacting when one of them or multiples might break.
So it's my turn to kind of put it all together. We've provided a lot of information, even more is in the budget books that will be available. But what does it actually mean and how does this play out? One of the things that is a driver this year is the valuation. So our assessment last year was at 78% equalization. What that means is our average home was not valued at its full property value. With that 78% equalization, our taxable assessed value was just under $5 million. We're now at 100% equalization, which means all of our homes are valued at the proper rate. I know there's some discussions about that, but those are for the assessment side of things. So at that rate, our taxable assessed value is just $727 million. That also means 92% of our residential properties increased in value between last year and this year because of that valuation change. Also means that 8% of our properties either stayed flat or decreased in value. One interesting thing, we also added 10 new parcels to the roll in this past year. So they've increased our value, and those 10 new parcels, I had on one of my notes how much they brought in, but they also increased the value of the total city. So the valuation, when we go to 100% equalization, is an interesting thing, because when you're looking and paying your taxes, you don't want it to be at the total value. But when you sell your home, you want it to be at the total value because that's when you make the money off of it. Valuation is an interesting piece to this, and it's controlled completely outside of the budget process for good reasons. When we look at what it does, in the budget you saw recommended and unrecommended items. There were over $3.5 million of items that were not funded. That doesn't mean that they're not valuable items. That doesn't mean that we won't need to review them in the future. It means that we had to keep all of the concepts of keeping our tax rate lower at the forefront. You'll see that the total appropriations, as I discussed earlier, is 22 million. Our revenues is 12. Our levy is 10. Our tax rate turns into that $13.97, down from the previous $17.25. The price of the median home has gone up. The tax on the median value home is $2,010, which means that for those median value homes, they will see a savings in their tax bill of about $17. They'll also see that property increase because last year their property was worth $117. This year it's worth $143.9. Water and sewer, as we discussed, there are slight increases because of the increases or decreases in demand on those items. So from here comes the next part. A public hearing will be held on the budget on October 7th at 7 p.m. It's the opportunity for the community to review the budget documents, which will go online tomorrow, and bring in their questions and criticism. It is also a holiday for some members of our community, and in the past when we've had budget meetings, we do allow written comments if someone is part of that community. Work sessions will occur starting on October 9th at 6 p.m. and continue every Wednesday until you pass the budget. Members of council will be asked to submit questions or revisions in writing by the Friday prior to the work session. Those questions can be submitted to me. I'll then organize them and work with department heads so they have the information available to you. That doesn't mean that you only can ask those questions in a session, but department heads will be prepared to answer your questions. Department heads have also been prepped that if they can't answer your question in real time, to please let you know that they'll come back to the next meeting to answer those questions. Not all of our department heads tend to attend every budget session, so if there's questions for them, they know to be in attendance and prepared. Budget amendments can be made by a council member on the floor of any meeting during the work sessions. At the end of your work sessions, the budget must be adopted by October 31st, 2024, or the budget I presented before you today becomes the budget. And I believe that is the end of the formal budget presentation. Without saying the most important part, this budget would not be possible without the staff who took time and effort to come up with it. There are new variables in this budget. You've seen the key metrics up there, unrecommended items, and they also have included their work projects. So as you review it, you will see a flavor of what they're doing right now to continue the success of the city, what the resources they'll need to move the city forward, and how we're measuring the impact that we have. Those key metrics and those work projects continue to get honed and changed. My vision is that eventually the key metrics that you see not only have quantity metrics, but they also have quality metrics and impact metrics, and that your work projects not only have current year, but start to outline future year. I know council and staff will be coming together this fall to hone on some of that even further, and we've started to make preparations for that. But this document is the starting point. And my favorite part is I now present it to all of you, and it becomes your document to make modifications and edits. If you have questions about the format or any of those things, I'm always available to assist. Thank you.
So thank you, City Manager and staff, Comptroller, for your hard work on this budget. The City Manager has asked for input from councilors if they'd like to modify, change, add the budget by the first work session, October 9th. I would ask that we kind of share that between each other so that everybody kind of knows what those requests are. In the past, it's been good sense to, if you're asking to reduce the budget in any one of the line items, to kind of have a follow-up on what you would like to do with that money, reduce the tax rate or put it into a general fund or whatever that might be. And if you'd like to add something to the budget to try to give staff some direction on where you would like those funds to come from, if you were going to add something to the budget. City Manager, in the past, past city managers have allowed slots of time for
Mhm.
counselors to come in. I'm just wondering if you're open to that?
Yes, I think I actually put it in an email to you guys last week with the slots of time.
Okay.
I'll have to look back through, but I think that I did do that. If not, I was thinking of doing that, but you will have some slots of time. I think the week, not next week, the following week, I will have time available.
Great. We got a lot to digest. This is a busy time of the season for us. Everybody all set for now? You ready to get your budget books? I know we're all excited. Any further comments at this point?
I will say, when you're done with your budget book, if you want to return your binder but keep the papers, we would appreciate it because it's just easier to recycle those. So just something to consider before you put, stickers all over it or something.
Okay. I need a motion to adjourn. Council Petropoulos, seconded by Council Morocco. All in favor? Any opposed?